It was Saturday afternoon. The sun had just set, creating a twilight that made it difficult to decide whether to turn on the headlights. Mark Evans didn't have to decide. He was pulling into his garage on a quiet street in Sharpsburg. A moment later, a thin, dark-haired man came out of a side door carrying a travel bag, a briefcase, and a laptop. Years of experience allowed him to handle the objects with ease. He entered his house without calling his wife Lisa, knowing who wasn't there. He went to the living room and left his briefcase and computer over the couch as he placed the bag of clothes by the stairs, hung his coat in the closet by the front door, and then took off his jacket and tie, unbuttoning the first buttons on his shirt. He had just returned from a regional managers meeting at ABC Industries, although technically he was not a manager, but rather the chief systems analyst, supervisor, competent in organizing staff, but with no idea of systems computer scientists, required his presence at the meeting in Pittsburgh. He had told his wife he would return on Monday, claiming that the meeting would be followed by seminars over the weekend. He had his reasons for doing so, and he didn't want to return early. He regretted not having brought more clothes. Comfortable for the trip, but I knew Lisa would have asked why. Now at home, he took a shower and changed into jeans and a t-shirt polo type. After a quick meal of leftovers and a bottle of beer, he read the local newspaper in the living room, pretending to be a husband resting after a trip. In reality, he was killing time while dealing with a personal crisis. I was past the denial stage, but I still faced anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. After the midnight, cleaned the kitchen, realizing that she was doing it for procrastinate. Unable to find another solution, he put on a light jacket and he headed for the side door. Remembering something, he returned to the living room, sent an email from his laptop, and then left the house. After spending 5 minutes in the garage, he started the car and drove off, letting the garage door close behind him. At 7:37 a.m., the Sharpsburg emergency dispatcher responded to a call. "Emergencies. What's your emergency?" A young-sounding female voice answered. "I need the police. I think a crime has been committed." "Crime? Where are you, ma'am?" the operator asked. "I'm at a payphone on Park Drive near George Washington Park," she answered. The operator, understanding the bad connection, he asked, "What crime has been committed, ma'am? Were you attacked or are you assaulted?" The young woman hesitated before answering. "No, it wasn't me. I'm fine. I was running through the park on the access path to the picnic areas and I saw a car parked there. The doors were open, the lights lit, and there was a lot of blood." The operator, now very interested, asked, "Will it be necessary to send an ambulance? Are there any injuries?" "No, there weren't nobody there, just an empty car and blood." A few seconds later, he added, "I didn't look around too much. I was afraid someone was coming after me, so I ran to this phone public to call them." He did the right thing. "A patrol car is going in-way and should arrive in less than 10 minutes. Please wait for the officers so I can show you the exact location." Alarmed, the caller, he replied, "No, I'm not going to wait, and if they come for me, I'm going home," then hung up. The emergency operator stared at the screen as the call ended. I hope not, having diverted the agents from something more important. Around 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Detective Peter Nesbitt arrived at the Evans home. A woman, blonde, parked in the driveway as he got out of his car. He approached quickly to her. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Mrs. Evans." She turned around as she pulled out a trunk of the car and answered, "I'm Lisa Evans. Do I know you?" "No, ma'am. I'm the Detective Peter Nesbitt of the Sharpsburg Police Department. We are trying to locate her husband, Mark Evans. Her car was found abandoned this morning in George Washington Park." He showed her his badge and ID. Lisa appeared, worried, but then she said, "Mark is in Pittsburgh. He always leaves his car in the airport." "They must be mistaken," Detective Nesbitt insisted. "We are sure it's their car. Both the license plate and VIN number match their registration." Confused, Lisa walked toward the side door. "If it's her car, it must have been stolen at the airport. I don't know what else, tell him." Nesbitt kept insisting. "When was the last time that you spoke to your husband? Could you call him now to make sure he's in Pittsburgh? Do you have a cell phone that I can call you?" Lisa stopped, dropped her suitcase on the floor, and searched her purse until I found her phone. "She called me yesterday morning from Pittsburgh. I'll call him now." He dialed his number, but a phone rang in the detective's pocket. He answered, "Hello, Mrs. Evans." Surprised, she asked, "How did you get Mark's phone number?" Nesbitt replied, "I can't give it back to her. It's evidence in a possible serious crime. It was found in her husband's car. Lisa, now more worried, she asked. Serious crime. What do you mean? Her husband's car was found with the doors open and a bullet hole. We need to find him. To rule out that he is a victim or a suspect, could you call your hotel in Pittsburgh? Lisa picked up her briefcase and said, Sure, the hotel number's on it. In my case, Agwenda always stays at the same Holiday Inn. Come in and we'll clarify this. Inside the kitchen, he quickly found the number and called the hotel, but after hanging up, he turned to the detective. The briefcase and the computer Mark's laptop is in the living room. I don't understand anything. The detective thoughtfully, he called his colleague. Hi, Dave, it's Pitt. I need a search warrant to the Evans home. We need to determine if Mr. Evans is a victim or a suspect. Bring her in as soon as possible. Possible. Waiting, he hung up the phone and sat down across from Lisa. An order to registry. You can search for anything you want, just ask. I want my husband found. The detective Nesbitt responded, I must follow protocol. If your husband is involved in something illegal, any evidence found without a warrant cannot be used in court. Lisa, enraged, he exclaimed, Illegal? Mark is not involved in anything illegal. He works with computers, Nesbitt asked. Why did you come back to town without telling him? Lisa stood up, pale, and whispered, Oh no, it can't be. Panicked, she said, I have no idea why he came back early. All I know is that he's not involved in nothing illegal. Her panic grew. Mark might be hurt somewhere. They have to find him. Detective Nesbitt, in a softer tone, said, We still don't know anything for sure, Mrs. Evans. I must do things properly. All of our officers, they're looking for your husband. Why don't you make some coffee while we wait for the order? Her sympathetic tone calmed Lisa, who started making coffee. However, she tensed up again when he added, While we're having coffee, could you tell me how you spent the last 48 hours? We need statements from everyone involved. Nesbitt waited a few minutes before asking for a preliminary statement. They sat down at the table in the kitchen drinking coffee while he described the condition of Mark's car, including the bullet hole and the blood. He explained that the blood suggested that a second bullet had hit the body, which lay in a pile of firewood next to the car, and that the bale was being examined. The car was towed for further inspection detailed, while the medical examiner and forensic scientist continued to work at the scene. Detective David C., Nesbitt's partner, arrived with the search warrant, and 2 forensic technicians began an exhaustive search of the house, garage, and the Evans car. Nesbitt arranged with Lisa to pick up the razor Mark's razor and toothbrush for DNA comparison. Lisa was so distraught that Nesbitt asked her to stay on the couch while they finished the search. After an hour, they decided to take only the briefcase, the laptop, and Mark's DNA samples. The laptop was password protected. Mrs. Evans, do you know the password? Her husband's laptop password? Lisa, hoping to help, replied, It used to be his first and last name along with his year of birth, Trimark 1971. It should work. None of the variations worked. Nesbitt there assured, Our technicians will find a way to access it. The objects were stored in the forensic van. Nesbitt sat down with Lisa to take her statement. Well, Mrs. Evans, I need some basic information about where you were this weekend. Let's start Saturday morning. Lisa took a deep breath. On Saturday morning, I was doing chores around the house. Mark called me from Pittsburgh Amora 1:30 to apologize for not being in my cyst home. Then I went shopping until 4:30 and came back. After dinner, around 7:30, I went to a friend's house and stayed there overnight. I woke up late tomorrow morning. Took my time and got home around 2. Heard it. She seemed more tense, looking at the ground and clenching her fists. Detective Nesbitt finished writing, closed his notebook and said, We may need more details later, Mrs. Evans. This is enough for now, but be prepared to contribute more if necessary. He put his notebook and polygraph in his pocket and stood up to join the others who continued searching the garage and the car. Before leaving, he asked her, Do you have any recent full-body photos of your husband? We could also use a close-up photo. We only have the one from his driver's license. He approached the fireplace and looked at the wedding photos. Lisa quickly went to get an album of photos. Here are some recent photos, Detective. Choose the ones you need. They sat together and Nesbitt chose a group photo and a close-up of Mark. These will be perfect. Lisa handed him the photos and he asked, Is the man in the photo a family member? If we need a DNA sample, a relative could help. If not, we can use the razor or the toothbrush. Lisa replied, It's not Blake Moore, Mark's best friend since elementary school. Mark has no close relatives. Nesbeth thanked her and joined the others in the garage. Lisa, on the verge of the tears, remained on the kitchen table. Nesbeth felt sympathy for her. Her husband was missing and possibly involved in an incident serious. The fact that she didn't know he was in town added to the problem. Mystery to the case. Detectives and forensic experts inspected the garage and the car. They found bloodstains on the accelerator and brake pedals, Lisa's car, prompting them to tow it in for further inspection. While the technicians packing the equipment, the detectives discussed the case. Nesbeth, looking towards the side door, he said to his companion, "What do you think of Mrs. Evans? I have my doubts, especially because of the blood on his car." His partner replied, "She looked like a wife worried, but it's hard to know now." "We shouldn't jump to conclusions hasty," Nesbeth decided. "Let's see how she reacts when we tell her about the blood and that we were going to tow his car." They knocked on the door and they entered the kitchen, surprising Lisa, who was talking on her cell phone. She quickly hung up the call. "They're back. I thought they were done," Nesbeth said. "We found bloodstains on the pedals of your car. We're going to tow it in for a thorough inspection. I hope you don't mind, Amount." Lisa looked stunned. "Blood on my car." "I didn't see any blood," Nesbeth replied. "We need to know how she got there. If she is related to the incident in the park, we will look for answers. We will also need the shoes you wore today. I haven't been to the park in weeks. I don't understand how there could be blood in my car." He handed her his shoes and then slumped into a chair, covering his face, and both detectives realized they needed more information and said their goodbyes, leaving Lisa slumped in the kitchen chair. "What do you think, Dave? Could it be that meanwhile at the central office an anxious voice interrupted the line? "I need the money now. I can't wait. I just want to know if you can guarantee payment for the information." Detective Nesbitt's voice broke into the conversation. "Sir, I assure you that we take every call seriously, and if your information is valuable, we will do a follow-up. Please tell us what you know." The man hesitated again before to talk. "I think I saw something related to Mark Ivins. Just a few nights ago, I noticed a car parked near George Washington Park that looked suspicious. It shouldn't have been there. It was dark and discreet, hidden in the shadows." Detective Nesbeth took note. "Can you describe the car, sir?" "It was a dark sedan, maybe black or navy blue, and there were two people in the front seats. I couldn't see them clearly, but it seemed like they were arguing heatedly." "Thank you for your information. If this leads us to anything, we will make sure you receive your compensation." The man's voice softened. "I just want to help. We appreciate it. And remember, this conversation is confidential." After the call, the detectives gathered excitedly to tell Lisa Evans this possible lead. They had a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that every piece of information could be crucial to the case. A man in the entrance of a shelter muttered, "Money. Now I need a juice." "If you need food, I can direct you to some shelters," a volunteer replied. "Not food, juice that cost dollars a bottle." The volunteer smiled but said, "If your clue is good, you could buy you lots of juices." "Okay, I'll wait." "I saw someone throw a gun into the river under the bridge at 3rd Street. It was Sunday morning. He had a rifle and 2 shovels. Volunteer asked, "Was it on the east side of the bridge?" "Did you throw them into the water?" "Yes, he threw them from the dock." "Can I describe it?" "He was a big man with blonde hair and his car was dark blue. The license plate began with SS, but I don't remember the rest." The volunteer wrote down the information and said, "I have everything what we need. Your number is 127. Call in a few days and we'll tell you if you help the police." The volunteer relayed the information to the police liaison officer. An hour later, AA diver quickly found the objects. The weapon was sent to the laboratory, forensic, where it was confirmed that it matched a recent crime scene in George Park, Washington. A report was sent to detectives and a technician recovered the 2 shovels from the evidence locker. As the detectives left a coffee shop, an archive employee handed them the ballistics and crime report stoppers. "Detectives, we have the weapon used in the George Washington Park shooting. The report is attached. Could lead them to the culprit," said the employee, handing them the documents. Klein and Nesbeth reviewed the reports and then searched for records of vehicles on the computer. "Pitt, let's split up. I'll interrogate our guest in the interrogation room, and you can ask a uniformed officer to bring Blakemore for questioning." "Sounds like a good plan, Dave. The pieces are starting to fall, Penkajar." Stole. Detective Klein gathered the reports and headed to the courtroom, interrogation room, where Lisa Evans was waiting for him. Meanwhile, his partner arranged for Blakemore to be transported by a uniformed officer. Soon they were both on their way. In the interview room, Lisa sat calmly, showing no fear nor sadness. "I'm sorry for the wait, Mrs. Evans. This room is monitored and recorded," Detective Klein told her. She replied, "I don't care. I don't have nothing to hide." Klein replied, "Okay, let's get started. Do you have a romantic relationship with Blake Moore? Yes or no?" Lisa slumped her shoulders and turned away her gaze. "Yes," she whispered. Klein showed her some papers taken from Mark's laptop. "We have proof of your affair. Your husband knew. He sent this to his lawyer, planning to file for divorce due to infidelity. This map shows your visits to Moore's house." Lisa looked shaken. "How did Mark Klein know?" He held up a small device. "He installed this tracker in your car, monitoring your location in real time." She stared at the device. "Mark knew for weeks and wanted a divorce. He began to cry." Klein continued. "Mark documented your encounters with Mo Saturday night when disappeared. He sent an email to his lawyer saying he was going to confront you and who was afraid of being arrested." Lisa said, "But Mark never showed up at home." Blake. "I spent the night there." Klein replied, "The preliminary results DNA tests show that the blood found in the park is yours. We also found the gun used and it's linked to yours. Lover. The question is, how long are you going to keep covering it up?" Lisa insisted. "Blake didn't do anything to Mark. We were together all night," Klein added. "We also found your husband's blood in your car and on your shoes. My partner is bringing Blake Moore in now. Whoever can tell us what happened and where to find the body of Mark will have a better deal." Lisa remained silent, visibly affected, while Klein gathered the papers and waited for his response. The detective handed him the reports of the evidence blood but barely looked at them. "Mark can't be dead. I love him, she said, clearly upset. "Blake will tell them the same thing. If Mark turned out wounded in the park, we had nothing to do with it." He cried into his wrinkled, soaked handkerchief. Detective Klein gave him a few minutes to compose himself. When seemed calmer, he said, "There is no doubt that your husband is dead." The coroner concluded that there is more than 95% probability based on the amount of blood lost and the lack of medical attention at any hospital in the county. He handed her the report and the photos of the scene. Seeing the bloody images, Lisa burst into tears. "Again, I'll leave you alone for a few minutes to think. You're not helping yourself by denying your responsibility." Klein left from the room, left the reports on his desk, and shook his head as he crossed paths with his superior. Then he headed to the break room for a coffee, while his commander monitored to Lisa from the interrogation room camera. Detective Nesbitt, still thinking about the case, arrived at Blake Moore's house accompanied by a patrol car. He was almost surprised when Blake Moore opened the door immediately. "Yes, officers, how may I help you?" Moore asked to see the police. Detective Nesbitt introduced himself. "I'm Detective Nesbitt. We're here regarding the disappearance of Mark Evans. We need you to come to the police station to ask you some questions. Mrs. Evans is there now, and we have questions that require his answer." Moore asked, "Am I under arrest?" "I know Mark is missing, but I don't know how I can help. We have some questions that you might be able to answer. Please join us." "He is not arrested." Two stunned tourists, Moore accompanied them in the unmarked car. He sat in the seat rear, complying with department protocol. Detective Nesbitt, he turned to his partner. "We're going to the police station." On the way, Nesbitt tasked Moore. "Do you also know Mrs. Evans? Is she just the wife of Mark for me?" "Why do you ask?" Moore replied, "Just curious." What do you do, Mr. Moore?" "I have a landscaping company." "Gardening?" "Yes." "We do a lot of work. Commercials, even for the city council," Moore said, relaxing a little upon arriving at the police station. Moore was placed in an interrogation room next to Lisa's. The detective Nesbitt gathered Klein's files and began questioning Moore. Initially, Moore denied the love affair, but evidence from emails and reports of surveillance made him confess. He admitted that the affair had lasted almost 4 months, but insisted that neither of them had hurt Mark, and that they had not had left the house the night Mark disappeared. As Nesbitt pressed him, Moore suggested a new theory. "If Mark found out about us, he could have exploded with rage or even hired someone to make it look like we were involved. He and we have a history." Nesbitt replied, "We have the weapon used. A witness, he described you in your car and gave us most of your license plate number. Don't try to claim that Mark staged an intricate self-destruction to frame you." Blake Moore stirred and he said, "Don't you know Mark?" "We've been best friends since elementary school, but I learned not to mess with his girlfriends or his wife. In high school, I dated one of his girlfriends behind his back. When found out, it scared me even though I'm bigger and stronger. He warned me that he would kill him if he did it again. The detective, slightly amused, replied, "So you were afraid of him, but you still had an affair with his wife?" Blake, calming down, said, "No, I was able to resist her. It was something that built up over the years, and a few months ago I made a move. We've been seeing us ever since. I can't believe he found out. We were very careful." The detective flipped through their reports. "Affairs often lead to murder. I think you and Lisa planned this. You can confess now or face the maximum penalty. You decide," Blake insisted. "We had nothing to do with it. If Mark found out, he could have done something drastic. Maybe he set us up." Detective Nesbitt said, "We have enough to search your house, your car, and your office. Confess now to get mercy. Use the head." Blake. Outraged, he exclaimed, "I didn't hurt Mark. Maybe Lisa did something, but I don't know anything about it." The detective gathered his papers and left the room saying, "When criminals work together, they're trying to blame each other. You won't be getting out of here for a while. Out." The detective Nesbitt found his partner with another report. "The shovels found in the river, they're from Moore's gardening company. These guys think we won't find out nothing." Later, the detectives presented their evidence to the prosecutor of district. Despite not having a body, the evidence was strong enough to present charges. Half an hour later, Lisa Evans and Blake Moore were charged with homicide by the death of Mark Evans. Both proclaimed their innocence while being read their Miranda rights. After the initial hearing, Lisa and Blake were registered. Their fingerprints were taken and their photographs taken, none of them needing to be told no. Smile. As they were led back to their cells, they spoke for the first time since they were accused. "What are we going to do, Blake? Can't you believe we did something to Mark? Or do we?" Lisa asked, still inquisitively. "We need our own lawyers, or maybe share one to save money since we're being accused of the same thing. But this is wrong." "I think Mark set us up," Blake said, frustrated. "You can't believe that, can you?" "Why would Mark do something so extreme?" Lisa asked, surprised. "I don't think he would do anything so extreme. You knew Mark as well as you thought. I'm surprised he didn't do something drastic when he found out. If I thought he'd find out, I wouldn't have touched you," Blake replied, shaking his head. Blake told Lisa about a past incident when he secretly dated a Mark's girlfriend standing by the bars of the cell, separated by a concrete wall, could talk easily. "I don't think Mark did this. I don't even know how he found out. We were always careful and only saw each other when he was out of town," Lisa said thoughtfully. "I regret having betrayed him. Even if he's not dead, I want a divorce," she added, her voice fading with emotion. Blake listened to her speech and said, "Lisa, stop. You knew the risks when you came to my house. You were aware of the consequences." Lisa calmed down and said in a low voice, "You have reason. I just hope you forgive me." After a pause, Lisa suggested, "Could I call to Robert Graham, our lawyer? Maybe he can represent us both and divide the costs." Did they agree? And Lisa called an officer to make a call. However, Robert Graham declined due to his involvement in Mark's divorce proceedings, recommending his colleague Basil Smith. Lisa agreed, and Smith was on his way. Blake was delighted to listen to this and thanked Lisa. They waited in their cells until she arrived, Basil Smith, an experienced lawyer. The presentations were brief and Smith reviewed the charges. "So both are charged with the murder of Mark Evans. What did the officers tell you?" Smith asked. "Mrs. Evans, you start." Summing up the main points, Lisa told her story, ending in tears. "I had nothing to do with this. I love Mark. I couldn't hurt him." Smith then turned to Blake. In turn, Blake briefly summarized his experience and stated, "We had nothing to do with Mark's disappearance. I think he set this whole thing up to incriminate us." Sensing the urgency of the situation, Smith said, "We must focus on getting them out of here. Bail will probably be $100,000 each. Will that be a problem?" Lisa, surprised, asked, "Do I need $1,000 to pay the bail?" "No, just 10% or $10,000 cash for the bond of the bail," Smith explained reassuringly. They both agreed that they could raise the money and were eager to be released. Smith informed them, "The hearing will be tomorrow morning. The date will be set there. Bail, and you can make the necessary arrangements to leave. Prepare to spend the night here." Both reacted badly to the news. The lawyer told them. He explained that he could do nothing more until the charges were formalized. Once they were released, he would speak with the prosecutor of the district to access the evidence and better understand the case. They were taken back to their cells where no one slept well, with a greasy dinner of fast food, a single blanket, and noisy cellmates. Kindra in the morning. At 10 o'clock next morning, they met with their lawyer before the hearing. Despite due to his disheveled appearance, they declared their innocence and bail was set at $100,000. Blake, a home and business owner, quickly negotiated a bond of $10,000 and was released early in the afternoon. Lisa was not so lucky, however. Sole ownership of your home and discovering that your savings account was empty, he had to call his parents for help. After a lot of persuasion, agreed to provide the $1,000. However, the delay meant that spent another night in jail, this time with 2 drunken cellmates. The next day, after resolving the financial matters, she was released. He returned home, took a shower, and ignored the incoming calls. The following month, it happened quickly. Lisa learned that Mark had withdrawn the money from her joint account to protect your share before the divorce. Received the papers of the divorce without knowing what he had done with the money, and Blake reunited several times with Basil Smith. Smith obtained copies of the evidence and planned meet with the district attorney to request that the charges be dropped, arguing the difficulty of achieving a conviction without a body or witnesses. He suggested hiring a private investigator to explore the possibility that Mark had faked his own disappearance. Blake agreed, but Lisa believed Mark had been the victim of a failed carjacking attempt. Over the following weeks, the investigator found nothing. He tried to locate the informant, who had reported the discarded rifle and shovels, but no one recognized the voice of the call. The informant never contacted again, which increased the mystery. Meanwhile, the tension between Lisa and Blake was growing. After being released, Blake suggested that continue their adventure, but Lisa refused, blaming him for her situation. "I want to have nothing to do with you except what is related to our court case," she said, often crying. Blake's response was cold. "Whatever, Lisa, you're not the only woman in this city." They only spoke in the presence of their lawyer, and outside of that they maintained the distance. Their adventure had been frozen. A month after their release, Basil Smith organized a meeting with District Attorney Jeff Benn. Lisa and Blake hoped that the charges were dropped. After being bombarded with questions about their relationship, they filtered calls with caller ID and answering machine, wanting to clean their names and move on. Jeff Beaton, surprisingly young and elegant, he began. "I have just received the final reports from the coroner and the police. Based on the evidence, I am offering a reduced sentence of between 8 and 12 years old. If they agree to plead guilty to second-degree murder degree." Lisa and Blake were shocked and loudly proclaimed their innocence. Their lawyer, trying to calm them down, he asked how Bagden justified the offer. Bagden explained, "We have new evidence. The DNA from the blood on your car's license plate and the trunk seal matches that of Mark Evans. Also, the black polyethylene found under Mark's car matches material from her gardening business." Lisa, furious, accused Blake. "What did you do?" Blake exploded. "You know I had nothing to do with this. You were with me when it happened." Basil Smith intervened, calming them both down. "I'm sorry for my clients. We were hoping the charges would be dropped, but your statement took them by surprise." Bagden, amused, replied, "I understand, but we have enough evidence to go to trial. The coroner's report confirms that the victim lost too much blood to survive. The crime scene suggests the body was dragged and loaded into a car. The prosecution is confident." Bagden handed in the reports and left. Lisa and Blake spoke hurriedly, with Smith, who asked them to remain silent. "I know you are shocked. I don't know attack each other. We must think of a defense. Do you want to reject the deal?" You both rejected the deal. Convinced they would not be convicted, Smith agreed to prepare for the trial. After they left, Smith reviewed the reports, wondering if his clients were telling the truth. Despite his doubts, he was committed to defending them. Months later, the trial began. Judge Robert Cox took his seat at 10 a.m. on a Monday. Basil Smith sat between Lisa and Blake to manage the tension between them. Had considered suggest separate lawyers, but they couldn't afford it. Blake's business was in trouble, and Lisa had quit her job due to the stress of the trial and to the difficulties with her missing husband's friends. The district attorney, Jeff Bagden, began his opening statement by directly addressing the members of the jury. "We don't have Mark Evans' body, but we intend prove that he is dead and that the accused are guilty of his murder." He revealed that the defendants had had an affair that Mark Evans discovered, which led him to file for divorce. although it was unclear how or when Mark found out. Traces on his computer showed he knew when and where they were. Emails, electronic documents documented their follow-up efforts, financial preparations for divorce, and their intention to confront them. We cannot specify when they were found, Bagden continued, but we know the results. The evidence suggests they were found in Mr. Moore's residence, where Mr. Evans was incapacitated, placed in the passenger seat and taken to George Washington Park. There he was, shot in the upper chest while probably unconscious. It was dragged out of the car, thrown to the ground, and shot again, this time reaching his carotid artery. Graphic photos will show his final moments. At that point, Lisa Evans lost her composure, requiring the intervention of Judge Cox to restore her composure. Order. Bagden continued. After the second shot, Mr. Evans was wrapped in plastic, dragged from the scene, and loaded into the gentleman's trunk mirror. It was taken to an unknown location and buried. The weapon, the murderer, and the shovels were thrown into the river, but a concerned citizen reported this, which led to the police to recover them. Forensic analysis confirmed the presence of the accused at the crime scene. SAS Spin Portier scene found Mr. Evans's blood in Mr. Evans's car more and in Lisa Evans's shoes. Bagden concluded by saying that the defense would claim that they were not on the scene, relying on each other's alibi. I'm sure they'll see the truth and find them guilty. Basil Smith counterattacked, emphasizing the presumption of innocence and asking the jury to focus on the evidence. Despite their efforts, the prosecutor's statement had a strong impact. The first witness, a computer expert, testified about the emails and maps that Mark Evans used to track his wife's meetings with Mr. Macredo. In Mark's letter to his lawyer, accurately recorded locations and times. This evidence embarrassed Lisa Evans, while Blake Moore looked bored. The interrogation of Smith didn't accomplish much, as the device and emails were indisputable. Reporters took special note of the device tracking, anticipating the interest of its readers. After a long pause for the lunch, the trial resumed with the testimony of the emergency operator and 2 patrol cars that responded first to the scene. They provided basic, undramatic facts about the discovery of Mark Evans' car. The intensity of the trial increased when detectives and forensic doctors described the crime scene, supported by large photographs, charts showing bullet holes, blood, and drag marks. The coroner detailed the blood loss, estimating it to be between 3 and 4 pints, and he described the spurts of blood that indicated a severed artery. He concluded that Mark Evans was dying when Lisa Evans lost control and screamed, "No, Mark can't be dead." His outburst forced the judge to suspend the trial until the following morning. The second day began, with the medical expert continuing his testimony, focusing on the evidence of the blood samples. After 15 minutes, prosecutor Jeff Biden finished his cross-examination, and the witness was given to defense attorney Basil Smith. Smith checked that Lisa Evans, now sedated, was calm. His goal was to refute the graphic and almost executional impression of the shooting. Smith asked, "Did you estimate that Mark Evans lost between 3 and 4 pints of blood?" "Oh, but it's not possible that it was 1 or 2 pints depending on the distribution of the blood." The coroner replied, "It's unlikely, but not impossible." Smith continued, "Could he have reduced the severity of the injury? The application of first aid?" The coroner said, "Unlikely, but not impossible. Medical attention would have been necessary. Immediate." Smith highlighted the lack of evidence of immediate assistance and dismissed the witness, having obtained small concessions. Then a forensic scientist specializing in weapons and ammunition testified about 2 recovered bullets. One bullet found in the car seat was deformed. The other, found in a pile of firewood, was in good condition and matched the recovered weapon. Smithy asked, "Were the bullets checked for bone or tissue remnants?" The technician confirmed that there were minimal traces of blood on the bullets, explaining that passing through layers of padding and fabric had probably cleaned them. He noted that the bullets, they had a full metal cover typical of military use with a copper steel wrap around the core. He explained that this cover is more stronger than a standard soft metal bullet, usually made of copper. This was both good and bad for the defense. Although there was no evidence that the bullets had passed through the body, the circumstances and the type of ammunition explained the situation. The hope of tracking the weapon proved useless. It had been sold at an arms fair a few years ago, years without registration of the buyer. Basil Smith confirmed that it was not. They found no fingerprints or DNA of the accused on the weapon or on the casings. Everything that hadn't been washed away by the river water had been cleaned before being discarded. The technician spoke about the shovels found. There were no fingerprints or DNA, but they were marked with the mo-capping logo. 14 identical shovels were found in Moore's business. Cross-examination revealed no new information. Witnesses from the Department of Forensic Science and the police continued to testify throughout the morning and afternoon. Basel. Smith's most significant cross-examination occurred with a technician who found blood in Blake Moore's car. The technician admitted that the blood could have been planted by a third party, giving Smith a small victory. The situation became more complicated with the testimony of the technician who investigated Lisa Evans's home. Blood was found both in his car and on his right shoe. Although the technician admitted that he could not determine if the blood had been transferred from the shoe to the accelerator pedal, or vice versa, the lawyer. I hoped this doubt might help Lisa as the prosecution witnesses concluded their testimony. The third morning began with the presentation of evidence by the defense. The local newspapers, they speculated that the defense would face difficulties in the face of the forcefulness of the evidence presented by the prosecution. They also suggested that without a body, obtaining a conviction would be complicated, especially given that the strategy of the defense was to cast doubt on whether Mark Evans was really there. Dead. The first defense witness was the blood analysis expert. Dr. Wilb testified that the work of collecting evidence related to the blood could have been better. He explained that a proper analysis of the blood-soaked soil would have provided a more accurate estimate of blood loss. According to him, a quantity as small as 1.5 liters of blood could have created the scene, and a person who lost that amount could still be alive. The prosecutor didn't say so, cross-examined. Next to testify was Blake Moore, who pleaded not guilty and suggested that Mark had orchestrated his own murder. He claimed he had never owned a gun, and that the shovels found could have been stolen from their workplaces. Basil Smith kept the testimony short and gave it to Moore for the cross-examination. Jeff Bagdon asked him why he thinks Mark Evans would organize his own murder. Blake recounted how Mark had threatened him in high school after he dated Mark's girlfriend at his backs. Bagdon then asked, "So this isn't the first time that interferes with Mark Evans' relationships? Don't you think that if he wanted to destroy, would someone have chosen to destroy you?" Blake Moore couldn't answer directly to the question and muttered that his physical advantage over Mark would have prevented a confrontation. "Then do you think you could intimidate your friend to the point of making him take his own life? Is that why you felt comfortable?" "Taking his wife away?" the prosecutor asked, then continued without waiting for an answer. "Your actions prove that you are a narcissist who believes you can have any woman and can ignore friendship." Basil Smith objected, arguing that the prosecutor was testifying instead of asking questions. The judge agreed and instructed the jury to disregard the prosecutor's final statement. Despite Blake was visibly upset by this but left the stand without further comments. Basil Smith realized that Blake's testimony had backfired, but I hoped Lisa's testimony might help. Lisa, Ma Serena emphatically stated that she had not been involved in any attack against her husband and suggested that he might have been the victim of a robbery of the car. Basil chose not to ask any more questions. The prosecutor asked Lisa, "Where were you between midnight Saturday and 2 p.m. Sunday?" Lisa, embarrassed, replied, "I was with you, Blake Moore, at his home from 8 a.m., fed p.m. Saturday until approximately on 30 Sunday poem." Didn't quite answer the question. "Tell us what you did from midnight on Saturday until Sunday." Lisa, nervous, said, "I was in Blake's room at midnight. We were, having sex." "And how long did that last?" the prosecutor insisted. "Probably until after 1 a.m., Lisa admitted, embarrassed. "And then what?" he asked. "We slept until around 5:45 a.m., she replied. "Mr. Moore was still in bed when you woke up." "Yes, he was there. We went back to be busy and we fell asleep again around 6:30. Then we got up at 11 a.m., Lisa said quickly. Then he woke him up to do it again at 6:30, cleared the prosecutor. Lisa, embarrassed, replied, "No, he was already ready." The prosecutor, observing the jury's reaction, he continued, "Tell us exactly how it woke up." Lisa resigned, she said. "I just started doing it with him." The prosecutor prepared for the final blow. She said she loves her husband. "It's true. After Lisa's emphatic, he continued. He spent the night with his best friend as he ended his life. How can we believe she wasn't involved in his death? Lisa cried silent, unable to respond. Judge Cox put an end to his suffering by asking if there were any further questions. When no one responded, the judge announced a lunch break. After composing herself, Lisa joined her lawyer Basil Smith for a gloomy lunch. The experienced lawyer warned them that the case could go either way. Privately, he was pessimistic, as that both clients had failed on the stand. The afternoon session ended quickly when Smith announced that he had not. There were more defense witnesses. Both lawyers prepared for their closing statements. The prosecutor emphasized the overwhelming evidence against the defendants, while the defense. He stressed the circumstantial nature of the case, the absence of a body, and the lack of a motive. Of course, the case was delivered to the jury at 4 p.m. and they deliberated for 2 hours before retire for the night. The next morning, Lisa and Blake awaited the jury's verdict in the office Basil Smith. Sharing a conference room, they put aside their differences in the hope of being acquitted. At 3:30 p.m. The jury had reached a verdict. Lisa's parents, who'd traveled to the city for the trial, were present in the courtroom. In the call of the court, it was quickly announced, guilty of second-degree murder. Lisa burst into tears and Blake hit Thedible in frustration. They were handcuffed and taken into custody, but Lisa had a brief moment to speak with his parents, proclaiming his innocence. The week between the conviction and the sentence passed slowly. The parents of Lisa was visited every day. While Black received only one visit from a cousin during sentencing, both received sentences of 15 years to life. Basil Smith promised review court records for a possible appeal. 3 days later, they were transferred to state prisons. Lisa's prison had a good reputation, but Blake's had a history of unrest. With the trial over, media coverage ceased and Lisa Evans and Blake Moore disappeared from the spotlight. Public. A couple of months later, Basil Smith and Jeff Bagden met to have a drink and reflect on the case. Smith expressed surprise at the convictions, believing that the defendants' consistent stories suggested their innocence. Bagden responded, "The jury didn't believe them. I try not to take these cases personally unless they involve particularly heinous crimes or children. This case was not the worst, but it did not generate much sympathy for the children either." Accused. A year later, a news report reported a major riot in the Blake Moore prison. Blake had been stabbed during the riot and transferred to the hospital with a collapsed lung. He was in serious condition, but was expected that survived. 18 months after the conviction of Lisa Evans and Blake Moore for the murder of Mark Evans, Basil Smith was barely thinking about the case. He had passed the first year reviewing the transcripts but found no legal grounds for appeal. On a quiet Wednesday morning at the Innocence Project office in New York, the receptionist received a FedEx package. Inside was a DVD, a sealed biosecurity bag, and a multi-page letter. Intrigued, she called Tony Kelly, a young lawyer, to have it checked. Tony, dressed casually, brought the pea-suppressed package to his office. He had been working on the Innocence Project for a year, doing legal research. He enjoyed helping people who had been wrongly convicted. Sitting at his desk, he read the letter. The letter addressed to the Innocence Project began. In relation to Lisa's convictions, Evans and Blake Moore, I don't know where to start, so I'll start from the beginning. My name isn't important, but the information I have could change the lives of the 2 convicts and 5 other people, including myself. Me. About 15 months ago, a man responded to my ad looking for someone with advanced computer knowledge, knew as much or even more about business networks than I did. I hired him immediately. This man, whom I'll call Mark, was reserved but exceptionally talented. In 2 months, thanks to his efforts and long hours of work, my business grew by 50%. When Mark started working with me, had just arrived in the city and hadn't rented a place yet. My business was new, so I rented a basement room to earn extra income. I wanted to reinvest the profits in the business to support myself and my little son. Although it was a risk, something about the fingerprint on the handle of the door. Feeling uneasy, he quickly wiped it clean and left, waiting that the bloodstains would work. When he returned home, he anxiously awaited the news. It wasn't long before listened to how the story began to unfold. The police arrived at their house to ask him questions and showed him photos of the scene. Mark felt a mixture of triumph and fear. His plan, it was working, but I knew I was playing a dangerous game. Days turned into weeks and Mark kept up the facade of an innocent husband. Hurt by his wife's betrayal, wife while secretly watching the investigation progress. However, as more time passed, he began to feel the weight of his actions. Guilt began to consume him. He found himself falling into despair and isolation, haunted by the ghosts of what he had almost done. Mark's life had become a series of attempts to distract himself, but he couldn't manage to shake off the morbid chill that had accompanied his plans. Finally, he found help from a therapy that changed his perspective. It was during psychosis that time when he began to leave behind the dark world of revenge and seek redemption. Now, as he lies in the hospital bed sharing his story with me, I see the transformation that has crossed. The scars of his past still linger, but he has chosen to embrace a healthier future. It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, in dark places, there is an opportunity to heal and forgive. And now, as I finish this letter, I remain hopeful that Mark's story, his path to redemption, not only resonate with you, but also inspire others who may be fighting his own internal battles. With the light on in the bedroom of Blake, Mark quickly left, went to a public telephone, and using a modifier by voice, he reported that his car was in the park pretending to be a woman. He then got rid of 2 shovels and the revolver by throwing them into the river. Exhausted, has stayed in a motel for 2 days, taking supplements and eating Barcenergetic. He made another call with the voice modifier, this time pretending to be passing himself off as an old man, which helped the police find the revolver. Mark told me this whole story because he wants to leave his past behind as Mark Evans. He now uses another identity, which is how my son and I know him, and he wants to keep it a secret. He asked me to send this information to help overturn the convictions of Lisa Evans and Blake Moore. Tomorrow, I'll buy a copy of the New York Times, and an inkwell will use part of the cover to place all of Mark's fingerprints on a bloodstain that will match the park's DNA, proving it's alive. This should be enough to free them from prison. At the end of the letter was a note handwritten. Mark came out of surgery in good condition. He wants me to fly to Seattle tomorrow to send this package. I hate leave him, but this will give him peace of mind. We are expecting twins in a few months. Tony Kelly turned the last page to check for any notes additional, but it was blank. He swung his feet off the desk and examined the other items in the package. The DVD had a label that said photos taken in George Washington Park, and the black plastic envelope was marked for fingerprints and DNA. He reviewed the printed pages again for any extra notes and then called a senior lawyer. That was beyond his ability to handle it alone. They soon confirmed that the DNA belonged to Mark Evans and that the fingerprints matched from the car found in the park, proving that he was still alive. With irrefutable evidence that 2 people had been convicted of a homicide that never occurred, the Attorney General of the state and the governor expedited his release. A week later, they returned to court accompanied by Basil Smith, Lisa's parents, and including Attorney General Jeff Bagden, with some state representatives present. The state attorney general apologized for the wrongful conviction. He blamed Mark Evans for misleading the justice system and announced that they were working to find him and hold him accountable for the financial costs incurred. When asked where they would start looking for Mark, he could only shake his head. Blake Moore seemed changed. He no longer displayed arrogance, but rather a more attitude inclined towards conciliation. He apologized to Lisa for the events that led to their imprisonment. Lisa seemed indifferent, wanting only to leave with her parents. Both Basil Smith and the prosecutor apologized, acknowledging that they had been misled by Mark Evans and promised to be more diligent in future cases. Although the state did not assume legal responsibility, Lisa and Blake received compensation of $50,000 each. Blake, whose company had gone bankrupt and whose house was sold to pay legal fees, left town. He told Lisa that Mark had seriously harmed them, and that the check was just a fraction of what she had lost. Lisa, visibly worn out by her experience, she simply said they deserved it and walked away without saying goodbye. 2 weeks after local news reported on his release, a large envelope arrived at Basil Smith's office. Inside was a note addressed to the lawyer and a sealed envelope for Lisa. Basil handed the letter to Lisa in her apartment. After a brief conversation, he left her with the envelope, which she opened with apprehension upon recognizing Mark's handwriting. Lisa read the letter. "I'm sorry for the time you spent in prison. Your betrayal with Blake almost drove me crazy. My new life and my happiness has shown me that freeing them both was necessary for me and freedom. I know the authorities will try to find me, but I have confidence in my new life with my new family. Good luck and goodbye, Emma." The letter slipped from her hands, destroying any hope she might have had of a possible reconciliation with Mark.